Hey guys, I'm Angela and welcome back to Hobby Night. Today I'm going to be showing you a quick and easy method to paint non-metallic metals using contrast paint. That's right, I want to tackle non-metallic metals using contrast paint. In particular, I wanted to focus on golds. And with the Knight-Vexillor from the new Age of Sigmar Dominion box, which is the Stormcast Eternal guy with the banner, I thought he would be perfect to test out this method on a larger scale because I tried it on my grots last week. I thought it was really cool. I want to go bigger. I want to try it on a larger model. So the Stormcast or Eternal are my choice, and I'm really excited for it. So let's go ahead and get to painting. To begin, I wanted to get this guy primed up using some Greyseer because when I have models that are primarily armor, I kind of just want to go with that cooler tone. It works a little better in my opinion and complements the colors I tend to use for armor tones. I'm going to start using Leviadon Blue because I'm really worried about getting this dark color tone on, say, the helmet or any of the armor bits, because I do plan on going with a gold armor. And this deep dark blue tone that I want to use on the banner's background, I just worry about it messing that up. So I'm going to get it out of the way first, and this will also allow me to be a little messier with this paint because I can do a cleanup stage in between to basically fix anything that I got the paint onto that I don't want to, which because this banner has a lot of little nooks and crannies and stuff like that, I think it's really important to be a little messier with the paint and make sure it gets into all those recessed areas because there's a lot of flat, clean edges here that you can miss or that the paint might not get into or flow into well. So you want to make sure that it's getting there so it's solidly filled out. Okay, so this next step was a bit of a pain and it made me a bit frustrated. It took way longer than I was expecting. So I need to go in and do some cleanup with Greyseer because I got a lot of Leviadon Blue all over a bunch of places that I didn't necessarily want it. The flag has a lot of very small detailed areas and I need to break out some small detailed brushes to help give me some better control and everything. So it just took way more time than I anticipated. And it was probably the worst part about painting this, but with it done, we can get onto that armor. Let's get to that armor. Now that cleanup's done, we can go on to the fun stuff. And for that, we're going to have Basilicanum Grey as our foundation layer for our non-metallic metals effect. This is going to be really cool, you guys, and I'm hoping that it works as well as I want it to. We're gonna get this onto the armor in a single coating, making sure to get the color into the recessed areas, but we don't want it to be overly dark, so just do a single coating of this. Now, on part of the banner and the sword itself, I'm actually gonna be putting this color on a couple of layers on the hilt and the metal parts that are holding the banner to the actual pole arm and everything like that, because I want these to be a true gray and more look like a silver and everything. So those ones will be a little darker, but the armor just gets a thin layer because we're gonna be glazing it here in just a second. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this video. If you're new here and you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. And if you've enjoyed this video specifically or hated it, let me know down in the comments and go ahead and hit the like or dislike button. But I also wanted to talk today about my Patreon, where if you want to see behind the scenes content, including photos and vlogs, as well as an opportunity to help contribute to a brand new series that will be happening on the channel sometime soon, where I am going to be building a brand new army. And my patrons are going to have an opportunity to help me choose which army, what colors to pick, and various other things to vote on. So if you're wanting to make sure to get in on that action, go ahead and check out the Patreon link down in the description below. And I believe voting for the new series will be coming up soon, possibly at the end of July. So if you're wanting to get in on the first of all of the polls and everything and really help me pick that army, make sure to go ahead and check out the Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching. And now let's get back to the video. Let's make the armor gold. And for that, I'm going to be using Iyanden Yellow. This works brilliantly, pun intended, and I'm just so pleased with how it goes down because immediately the effect is exactly what I wanted it to be. The Iyanden Yellow over top of the gray gives me this brilliant, and not in the brightness level, but just I think it's really cool, antique gold look. And I think the one important thing that I really want to point out here is while I'm painting this onto the armor, I am going back and I am pulling out some of the excess yellow paint that goes into the recesses where I allowed the darkest bits of the gray to settle. This is incredibly important in my opinion because it creates a more patinaed effect for the armor, which I think helps accomplish the non-metallic look. Now, I'm not just going to be using this color on the armor, I do want to use it on a few other locations on the model where it will be shown as a true yellow. In particular, I want to focus on the banner, the sun on it on both sides, I'm going to be painting in this color, as well as the comets and some of the clasps on the banner pole itself, which holds the banner to it, and also a little bit of work on the sword. This just helps add a little bit of a different tone and I think creates a really cool effect of having this brighter gold as well as this antiqued gold look, and I think they complement each other really well and make them both feel more like non-metallics. Now you guys know me, I like really bright colors, and to help add some bright colors to this model, I'm going to be using Talassar Blue on some trim of the armor, as well as a bunch of the gems on both his forehead, his sword, as well as his chest piece. There's a couple of key areas where I want to put this on as an accent to give me sort of a blue non-metallic look, and I think it works pretty well. It's bright, but the gray underneath does help subdue the color down a little bit and still works really well with my gold. Next up, some Blood Angels Red to continue adding a little bit more color to the model. This is primarily going to go as an accent color on a few key locations on the banner, in particular that symbol that is around the diamond shape on one side of it, which was really nerve-wracking to paint. My hand definitely shook a little bit because I was just like, please don't mess up. I don't want to have to repaint the yellow. And thankfully, I didn't. It ended up working out well. But that's not the only place we're putting this. I'm going to put it on a few accents on his chest as well, and then I'm going to use it as the color for the underside of his butt cape. I did consider using the red on the outside instead, but I decided I wanted to subdue it and pull it back a little bit, keep this red tone a little bit more low key and not as used as heavily basically on the model, because I didn't want it to subtract from the effect that I was getting from my non-metallic metals. I really liked them dominating the model, and I felt like red, because it's so bright and brilliant in color, especially Blood Angels, that it might just take away from it. So we're gonna keep it a little hidden and just use it on the underside of the cape. My boy isn't just metal and armor, he does have a little bit of leather on him. So for that, I'm going to do two different colors. I'm going to use Darkoath Flesh on the banner's pole as well as the hilt of the sword, and then I'm gonna use Snakebite Leather on the actual belt on the guy, as well as all of his pouches and all of the straps that are actually holding his leather on. Now you can do this with really any of the leather tones that you want to, because there's a lot of brown contrast paints to play with. I particularly used these because I thought that they would complement with the overall color scheme I had done on the armor. I didn't want something that was going to read too orange, because I felt like that would really not look great against the yellows. So I went with something that was either more red or more true brown. Before I take care of the last major unpainted section on my actual figure itself, I'm going to take care of some of the groundwork, specifically the actual ground. And we're going to use a bit of Wyldwood on this. Now, ultimately for the basing, I am going to be going with a Stirland Mud effect, so I figured this dark brown tone would complement with it well. And then there's that little cattail that this guy has on his base, so for the stem on that, we're going to go ahead and paint that using a bit of Ork's Flesh. I'm hoping this color will end up blending with the tufts that I choose to put on the model. Now you might have noticed I have not painted the sword. Well, I was originally planning on maybe doing it in white, but then I decided, nah, I'm gonna do the cloak in white. So I'm going to pull some Basilicanum Grey back out and go ahead and apply this to the hilt of the blade, or not the hilt of the blade of the blade. And go ahead and get that painted up, because I wanted to keep it actually a little bit more classic. I debated maybe painting it in gold and having it look like it was made of the Sigmarite, but that wasn't really gonna work for me, and I thought having a little bit more of that silver tone in there would just look really stunning, and I'm really glad that I did this. All right, it's time to tackle the second most tedious part of this paint scheme, and that is using Apothecary White on basically everything else that we have unpainted on the model. This is gonna be all of the decorum on the banner itself, which is probably the most time-consuming and nerve-wracking part of painting it because there's a lot of little delicate lines, and contrast paint is very fluid, so it can run. Now, if I did end up getting a little bit of white outside of the edges, thankfully, because contrast paint does take a little bit extra time to dry when it is very fluid, you can actually dab it back up pretty quickly, and using a little bit of water, you can actually get any staining that might occur, because sometimes you can get this little ring of color that gets left over from dabbing up some additional color. You can get rid of that by just rubbing a little bit of water using a soft brush over top of it. Now, don't do this too hard because you could risk taking the paint beneath it back up, but if you've given that time to dry, it should be fine, and I've done this a number of times, and it worked brilliantly. So we get this all down on the banner, and then we also put it on his butt cape on the front side of it, as well as any little details around the armor where I may have missed, or any of the cloth bits that I may have missed. I'm super pleased with how this is turning out, but we have one thing left to do, and that's the base, so let's go ahead and finish it up. We're down to the base, and I'm going to try to have these guys match what I've done for my Hobgrots in my last video on Monday, which you can go watch after you finish this video. Make sure to do that. And I want them to kind of blend together because I really like the idea of the Orcs army from Dominion actually being, you know, on the battlefield against these Stormcast Eternal and everything like that. So I wanted their bases to blend. And so for that, I'm going to use a bit of Stirland Mud. We're gonna put this down, and I'm going to use my texture tool to spread it around as well as create a little bit of additional texture because I want it to have a little bit of a rough surface and everything like that. I don't want it to dry too smooth because occasionally it can. Once it's thoroughly dried, I'm happy with the texture, but it's not standing out super vividly, so I'm going to fix that with a bit of quick dry brushing. We're going to pull out Tallarn Sand and also a bit of Tyrant Skull and put this down in 2 separate layers to create a nice, rich, warm earth tone. And with that, the base is done. I just need to tuft it, and then we can look at the final model. Here he is. I'm so happy. I can't even describe how pleased I am with this non-metallic metal effect. I really liked what I had done on the grots previously. I had done some really cool stuff with glazing over the gray, and I've done that a little bit with some other things previously, but with the Stormcast Eternal today and this guy, especially on his armor, playing with that gold, it just worked exactly how I had hoped it would. It looks amazing. I have this wonderful antique gold look that I really, really love, and I think it looks brilliant next to that brighter pop of the true Iyanden Yellow in the banner. So like, there's just so many things happening, complementary colors, like I love my use of the red and the blue and like all the lesser colors that I use throughout the model to sort of bring some emphasis and add some variety in. I think I balanced it really well. I'm just so happy with how this guy turned out. And then I'm really pleased with what I ended up doing on the base. I really was not super thrilled when I first just put the Stirland Mud down, and so adding the dry brushes and then putting all of those glorious Gamer's Grass tufts on there just worked so well. And it's basically like exactly how I imagined him looking. And I don't feel like I get that a lot, I guess, eventually from my models, but this one I had a really specific vision in mind for what I wanted him to look like, how I wanted his color scheme to go, and how I was hoping that the contrast paint would actually work. And I succeeded on every step of the way with it. So I'm just incredibly pleased with how this guy turned out. Thank you guys for watching, and an extra special thank you to my patrons, which if you'd like to join them and be here on this list, you can find a link to my Patreon in my description below. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed painting these non-metallic metals using contrast paint today. It has been a blast. Let me know what you guys think of this method down below. Are you guys gonna be using it? Are you gonna stick with the true non-metallic method? Or are you just gonna skip it completely and stick with metallics? Let me know, but thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. I've been Angela, you've been watching Hobby Night. I'll see you later. Bye.